My name's Tyler. How are you guys? I hope you're doing well. Welcome to my show called Table for Two, where I invite guests and we just talk about their lives and unheard stories and their inspirations of what they like to do. It's very relaxing, chill, and very fun. We laugh and have a good time. I also drink coffee too when I'm on the show because, that's because when you go and see my show, it's a coffee with a smiley face on it. It's like a coffee that's shaped into a smiley face. It's crazy, so check it out. If you ever want to be on my show, I have some great stories I love to share, and I would love to hear your story too. So come on down. Thank you, and talk to you soon.
Hey, welcome back to the How to Podcast series. I have with me Tyler Barker is in the house, a young podcaster. I love young podcasters. This is great. And we talk a little bit about how to get younger people into podcasting so they're not old like me. Oh boy. Tyler comes on. We're going to talk a little bit about his show, answer a few questions that he has to help him grow his audience, about websites, about getting guests on his show. A great conversation with Tyler. And again, he's a new podcaster, and I would love if you go and give him some support. And if you love coffee, Tyler's big idea for his podcast is similar to Jerry Seinfeld's cars and coffee type show, but Tyler's doing it as a podcast. So really cool to have Tyler on the show. Would love if you go give him a little listen as well. Appreciate that. Here we are with Tyler Barker here on the How to Podcast series. Hope you enjoy. Here we go. Hey everybody, welcome to the How to Podcast series. My co-host is here. Hello, Tyler. Tyler's here. He has a podcast, and we're going to be talking about all the great things podcasting. And I'm so happy to have Tyler Barker here with me. We met through a mutual friend, April. Hi, April. And we're going to be talking about a bunch of stuff here on the episode. Tyler, great to have you here. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. This is so cool. I'm so honored.
I said your name and I saw you going for a drink. I'm like, oh, there he goes. There you go. Good to see you. How are you?
Yeah, good to see you too. It's hot where I'm at right now.
Really?
Yeah. I'm in Seattle.
There you go. The home of coffee, right? Isn't that where coffee comes from? I don't know.
Yes, that's where the first Starbucks is made. Yeah. Do you guys have Starbucks too? Because you're in Canada, aren't you?
We do. I have one probably 5 minutes from my house.
Oh, wow. You also live by Niagara Falls, right?
I do. Yes, I do. I'm about 10 minits from Niagara Falls. So that's pretty cool. It's a big hill with lots of water. Everyone loves it. So
yeah. Do you get tired of it?
Sometimes you forget about it, to be quite honest. You drive by, you're like, oh yeah, there's a natural wonder right over there.
Yeah. Do you get a lot of tourists? Because I would imagine.
Yes. People come from everywhere to see this. So it's pretty cool. Have you ever seen it?
No, I've not. I've seen it on TV, but nothing too crazy.
When you stand at the edge, at the top of the falls, it's right over a little fence, and it's right there. The power and the sound of that much water going by you. It's pretty amazing. Yeah. Pretty amazing.
I would imagine. And then is it free? Because I know that you can ride a boat down below and you could be really close to the falls, couldn't you? Right?
Yeah, you have to pay for that, but you can just walk right up to the edge of the falls. It's right there.
Oh wow.
Pretty cool.
Dang. That's awesome.
You gotta come check it out.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to. That'd be fun. Yeah.
All right.
Have you ever been to Seattle?
I haven't. I've been in Canada. I've been out to BC, but that's about as farther west as I've been. So
cool. Awesome. Sorry, I interrupted you.
I love it. This is great. This is good, Tyler. Okay, talk about your podcast, Tyler. What's going on? What are you doing? How long have you been doing your podcast? Give us all the information.
Yeah. So I'm Tyler. Hello. Hi. What I like, I have a podcast called Table for Two, and what it is I actually invite my friends to come on it, or other guests who have inspiring and interesting stories and their ambitions and what they like to do and what they're inspired to do, and then I talk about it and what they get started and how we met and all that. It's really relaxing, chill, and we just have a really fun time. I actually got inspired by it by Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee by Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah, I love that show.
Yeah, so then I got really into it, and I'm like, man, that seems so cool. He seems so relaxed. He seems so cool. So I was like, I want to do that, and I always wanted to do podcasting, but I just didn't know how to start. and I want to contribute that show into my show. And so I was like, oh, maybe I can make it work. And so, yeah, that's pretty
Nice.
much how I got inspired of it. Yeah.
Good. How long have you been podcasting for?
I've been doing it since February 2021. So like a year, right? I think.
Nice. Yeah.
I can't do math, but
Yeah.
I think, yeah. What about you? How long have you been doing a podcast for?
About 3 years now. So, and now I have 7 shows. So I have a podcasting problem, Tyler. I have too many podcasts. Too
That's
many.
so cool, though. That's
But
amazing.
I get to meet amazing people, Tyler, just like you. And
Yeah.
it's so cool that you can have time with somebody that they might not make time for you otherwise.
Right.
Like, who are you?
Yeah.
Why are you calling me?
Right.
Then you say, I have a podcast. They're like, I want to be on your show. And you're like,
Right.
oh, cool.
Right. Sorry to interrupt you again. I just love like for me personally, I don't know about you, but like in a podcast too, you can really get to know someone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like for like regular chat days, if you meet someone at school, you just talk to them for 10 minutes, but you don't really know their story or like, the things that they do and like who they met. And on a podcast, you can just go for like an hour and be like, wow, I never knew that, with this person. So I love to hear their stories too.
Cool. Okay, Tyler, how old are you?
I am 24.
Okay, 24. So you're the same age as my kids. So now I feel
Oh,
really
cool.
old.
You
Okay.
look great though. What are you talking about?
What are you talking? Okay, all right. I'll give you $5 for that. Okay, so Tyler, let's get more younger people, not old people like me, younger people doing podcasting. What's the trick? How do we expose podcasting to a younger generation, your generation?
Mm-hmm.
What do we have to do that?
That is a really good question. I've recently been noticing that there's been a lot of different podcasts about like different generations about like sports and movies and comedy, like anything that you can talk about, they have a podcast about. And so I don't know. I just think that maybe you can, I don't know, maybe promote it in a way and like tell your friends, and if they're interested, they can probably come onto it, I guess, maybe, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So what do your friends think of you having a podcast? Do you have to explain to them what a podcast is?
No, some of them actually know what my podcast is about. They're like, "Hey, I've been noticing you doing podcasting, this and this and that." I'm like, "Oh, cool, really?" And then all of a sudden, I ask them, "Hey, you want to come on it?" They're like, "No, no, 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 no. I don't know." I'm like, "What do you mean?
No.
What do you mean? You'd be great at it." And they're like, "Okay, let me think about it." And I had like the most shyest people like on there, and we would just talk for like a whole hour, and like we keep going. I'm like, "Okay, we kind of have to wrap it up," And they're like, "Can we please do it again?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, we can do it again." Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. What about you? What do you?
I think we need more young people doing podcasts, and I feel old when I say young people. We need people that are younger than 40 podcasting. Mm-hmm. So I love the idea that you have a show, and I want, if somebody's listening to us right now, Tyler, and they are your age or younger, and they're like, I don't know if I want to start a podcast or not. Why should I? What would you say to somebody your age, thinking about starting a show, but they're not sure? What would you tell them? You talk to them right now. What would you say to them?
I would say, if you're thinking of actually doing a podcast, I think you should actually do it, because then you might surprise yourself. You never know. Because like for me, I always wanted to have my own show, but I don't know how to start or like, where to go. What do I do? What do I talk about? And the first step is probably the hardest step, I think, in my opinion, is like actually getting started and putting forth into your show. You know what I mean? And then like actually doing the work. And then eventually, once you did the first step, you do the second step, and it just becomes easier and easier and easier. If that makes sense. So, yeah. If you're thinking of it, doing it.
I love it. Perfect. Okay. So Tyler, finish this sentence for me about your podcast. Okay.
Yeah.
So what I want you to do is I want you to tell me the name of your podcast again.
Yeah.
And then I want you to say, want you to tell me what it's about. Just short. And then I want you to answer this question. I'm creating this podcast so that my audience will do what at the end. Okay. So my podcast name is the Tyler Podcast. It is a podcast all about Tylers, so that my audience will blank. So put your podcast into that sentence and tell me what name of your podcast, why you have the podcast, and then what do you want your listener to do with the information that you're giving them in your podcast. So go ahead, do that for me. What do you think?
Yeah. Okay. So hello, I'm Tyler, and I have a podcast, and my podcast is called Table for Two. Actually, there's a lot of podcast name for Table for Two, but mine is as a coffee picture on it
Okay.
as a smiley face, and so
In the coffee.
'cause,
Nice.
yeah, it's a real coffee. I want to show you sometime. It's pretty great. Um, uh, my podcast is about relaxing and having a good time, and you know, getting out of your comfort zone, and pretty much that's what my podcast is about, and like learning new things about who the guest is and what they like to do, and hear their story of their life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, so the last question was so that my audience will what? What do
So
you want
that
the
my
audience to do?
so that my audience can try new and exciting things too, and that if they want to become on my podcast, they can.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, because the reason why I ask the so that question is that's how you're going to measure whether or not you're being a successful podcaster.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if I have a comedy podcast and
Mm-hmm.
my goal is to make one person laugh,
Mm-hmm.
that's my goal for my show. I'm
Mm-hmm.
happy with one listener for my show as long as they
Yeah.
laugh. No, I'm a success.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So now I know
Mm-hmm.
that my podcast is going well.
Yeah.
So you need to have some kind of measuring thing to figure out whether or not this podcast is working for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's the one thing a lot of new podcasters don't have is they don't know when they're doing well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you talked earlier before we hit record that you have a small audience for your podcast starting out, but you want to see it grow.
Mm-hmm.
So for you, how do you know if you're being successful in your podcast? Like you're doing the thing that you meant to do when you
Mm-hmm.
started. How do you measure your success?
That's a good question. I don't know. That's what I'm kind of stuck with, because
Okay.
I invite my guests, and we have a good time, we laugh and all that. And then once I submit, and promote it and all that, it gets like a certain amount of people, but every time I go look at the reviews, sometimes, well, in the beginning I wasn't really like caring about the views and all that, but recently I'm like, oh, I've made like over 54 episodes. I'm like, oh, it's the same thing over and over again, like five viewers, five listeners, this and that. And I'm like, huh, interesting. Okay, so how do I grow that and expand it?
Okay. So I'll give you an example. There's one person I work with. They have a podcast and they're all about meeting new people and growing their circle of connections. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's the idea. They're actually not even worried about getting a single listen at all because all
Right.
they want to do is meet people because they have a podcast.
Right.
So that's how they measure success. Can I get an interview with Tyler? And Tyler says, yes, I'm a success.
Right.
Oh yeah. And I have a listener.
Right.
But I want to talk to Tyler. That's all I want is just talk to
Right.
Tyler. And then they
Mm-hmm.
know they're a success. So that's
Right.
that's a totally different focus than I want 100,000 listeners. That's
Mm-hmm.
a totally different conversation, right?
Right.
So, if meeting people and having time with them in your calendar is your measurement of success, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter if you have one listener.
Right.
You just want to meet these great people, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want to meet actors.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and like hear their stories too, and get their connections, like you said. Yeah.
So that's how you have to be very clear about how you're going to measure what is a successful podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because everyone
Mm-hmm.
has different motives for starting their show. So,
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
if 5 listeners is what you want, you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. You're a
Mm-hmm.
success. If you
Mm-hmm.
want 2 million listeners,
Mm-hmm.
well, you have a lot of work to do, right?
Right.
So, you know what I mean? So you got to
Right.
figure out what that is for you, because that's going to keep you motivated as well.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Good advice. Thank you.
Yeah. So can you clarify then a little bit more for you going forward? How are you going to measure the next 50 episodes and whether or
Mm-hmm.
not you're a success or not? What is your goal?
I guess like try not to read in too much of the review. No, to like the not the ratings of it, but how many listeners I get. More like the side of like, oh, I'll just keep doing what I'm doing and like enjoy it a lot more. Well, I am enjoying it a lot more than I am, but like, you know what I mean? Like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, try not to care so much as the views or the listens I get per episode. If that
Ha-
makes, that
Yeah.
makes
Have
sense.
you ever heard back from your listener at all? Have you got an email, any kind of correspondence back from your listener?
Well, that's the thing. So, like, every time I talk to them on my podcast, 5 minutes later, we actually talk about the podcast and how they felt and like, what do you think of it? This and this and that. They're like, yeah, we take each other notes, we give each other notes and such. And then I'm like, yeah, let's do it again sometime. And then, it takes me a couple days to edit because like I want to make sure it's good. And I do voiceovers and I put like a few music tones in there.
Yes.
And then I send it through, and then I have another few episodes lined up, and then I reach back out to them like a couple weeks later. I'm like, hey, we should do it again. I'm like, yeah, sure, or no, I'm good, and maybe later I'll think about it. I'm like, okay, cool. But then in my other mind, I'm like thinking of like other guests who I can have because like I want it to like be consistent.
Yeah. It's kind of nice when you hear back from your guests, but also when you hear back from your listener, people that haven't been on the show.
Right.
Okay. So you're saying 5, for example, for an episode that have listened. Now imagine 5 people sitting in like a little cafe restaurant or something. You walk in and see 5 people sitting there waiting for you. They want to meet you and hear from you today. And you look at them and go, oh, there's not 50 people here. I'm going to go home. But the 5 people are like, hey, what about us? Right?
Right.
We showed up. What about us?
Yeah.
Right.
The
So
5 people is great.
yeah. So I would say for you as a newer podcaster like me is to focus on the people you do have listening and try to do something so you can actually hear from them. Excuse me. So you can actually hear from them, something that you can get a conversation going where you're not just talking to them, but they're talking back to you and make it easy for them to speak to you. That'd be really kind of cool.
Yeah, I also don't know who listens to my podcast. So, like,
Good.
it doesn't say who does. So
Yeah.
then I'm kind of like, there's a needle in the haystack whenever I do reach out to new people. And that's when, like, the shyness comes up and, like, oh, I can't. I can't. I'm like, yes, you can. It's fine. You'll do great. You'll do fine. And they're like, okay, let me think about it for a month and I'll reach back out to you. And like, okay. And then that's like when I have, like, other guests that's already come back on sometimes.
Nice. Good. Awesome. Yeah. So you threw some questions at me before we started. One of them was about how to grow your audience size.
Yes.
What have you done so far to grow the size of your audience?
Well, recently I got advice and they said one of my other podcasters that I've known, it's like one of my best friend's mom. She also does a podcast and she's like 10,000 downloads.
Wow.
Which is quite a lot. And I'm like, whoa, how do you do it? And she just promotes it everywhere on every social media that she can. Where unlike for me, I would just only post it on Instagram.
Okay.
And so, recently I just posted like the newest clip of my podcast. I actually had one of the band members of Eye of the Tiger come on.
Nice.
And I would post that onto Facebook and Instagram and TikTok too. But
nice.
Yeah.
There you go. That's going to help for sure.
Yeah.
The other thing you can do is doing what you're doing right now, is being on someone's podcast.
Yeah.
Because and now all of my listeners are hearing your voice for the first time, maybe, and going, who's this Tyler person? I want to go check out their podcast.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So that helps for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess my next question is like, how do you get on to other people's podcasts without, pretty much that's it. Yeah.
Okay. So if you ever interact with anyone with a show, then ask them. Either can you be on mine or can I be on yours? Find another podcast that kind of feels like your podcast a little bit because they already have an audience and that audience would like your stuff because you like that podcast. There's a good chance that they might like your show as well. So maybe reach out to that host and just say, hey, I love your podcast. I also have a show. I'd love to talk to you sometime.
Right.
You're not asking to be on the show. You just want to talk to them. And you can ask them, hey, how are you growing your show? Tell me more about your show. Build a friendship with that other host. You can see where that goes. You're kind of planting a seed, right? That can come back to you in the future. So reach out to another podcast that you like and just say, hey, I'm also a podcaster. I'd love to talk to you sometime.
That's cool.
Do that.
That's awesome. Okay.
That does work.
Okay.
Right.
I'm writing down
Yeah, you
notes.
do. I love it. That's great. So the other thing you can do is you can always advertise on another podcast. So when you go to Instagram, and I have Instagram accounts for all my shows, you're talking to a group on Instagram that may or may not listen to podcasts. Okay.
Yeah, that's true too.
So
Yeah,
there
good
might be
point.
people there that don't even know what a podcast is. And you're like, listen to my podcast. They're like, Tyler, I don't even know what you're talking about. What's a podcast? You're like, hey, listen to this. They're like, why would I do that?
Yeah,
Right.
right.
Okay. You're like, okay, so what you're asking people to do on Instagram is to leave the app, go somewhere else and listen to a show. How many times would you leave Instagram if somebody asked you to leave Instagram to do something?
Do it.
Right. So just keep that in mind. Okay. Some will, but not everyone will.
Right.
Okay. So use Instagram to complement your podcast. And what I would say to go alongside of that, to grow your audience, is to advertise where people listen to podcasts, which is a podcast. So if you, for example, Tyler, create for me a little commercial for your show. Hi, this is Tyler. This is my podcast. I do this and this, and we drink coffee and we talk about fun things. Come over and check out my show. Blah, 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 blah. See you. Give me that as a commercial. I'll put that in my show. So all my listeners, when they listen to my show, all of a sudden you pop up and they're on their phone going, who's this Tyler person? I want to know more. And they click a button and they go right to your episode, right from my show.
Right.
So use my audience to grow your audience by giving me a commercial for your show. It can be 30 seconds, 60 seconds, just something that tells me, why would I listen to your show?
Right.
Answer that question, record it, send it to me, and I'll put it into the episode.
Well, that's really nice of you.
Now you're advertising on a listening app. You're not asking somebody to leave Instagram and come to podcasting. You're talking to a person who's listening to a podcast. They're already here.
Right.
That's it's like getting a whole bunch of fish, putting them in a big bucket, and then going fishing. They're all there together. You don't have to find them. They're right there. I can see them swimming. I could actually reach down and grab them. They're right there swimming in the bucket. Very easy to catch than a big lake or ocean and you don't know where they are. I can see the fish.
Right.
Let's just grab them. They're right there. Okay.
You can see the fish.
Okay.
That's amazing. That's
Instagram,
great.
you can't see the fish. You might catch one. You maybe might not catch anything.
I like the idea of like going to other podcasters and like trying to promote your show and whatnot. But isn't that like kind of rude though? You go into like someone else's podcast and be like, hey, yeah, I'm taking all your followers and listeners. Come to my podcast. Yada, 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 yada.
Come with value. Come with value, Tyler. Say to the host, I love your show. I love that you talk about this. I would love to come on your show and talk about this to help your audience. I have a great story. My story is amazing, and I would love to come on and share what I've learned.
Yeah, I would love to have you on. That'd be amazing. Yeah.
But do that to another host and listen to their show as a listener, and then approach the host and say, Dave, I love the How to Podcast series. It is awesome. I loved episode 76 when you talked about how to deal with haters. That really helped me because I have a lot of people that really bug me. And your episode really helped me. So, now I'm talking to a listener. You're a listener to my show. That's amazing. I want to talk to you. I'm going to ask you questions like, what did you like? What did you not like about my show? And you can help me be a better host. And while you build that relationship, then you can then also either be on their show, have them on your show, and again, play a commercial for your episode, for your podcast.
Right.
That's a great way to build your audience. And you have to do it one at a time, Tyler. Don't try to buy a bunch of listeners because they're not real listeners.
Right. How do you buy listeners? I didn't know you could do that.
You can go and hire people to bump up your numbers, but they're not real people.
Yeah.
Right. And they're not real listeners. They don't really care about your episodes.
They don't. Yeah. No. So why would you go that? Well, yeah. I think that's
don't do that.
Funny. Yeah. Don't do
that. You're no longer talking to your audience. You're talking to a bunch of people who don't
robots.
Care. Yeah. They don't care about your stuff.
No. So they just like the money of it all.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Does that help a little bit about growing the audience?
Yeah. I think so. Yeah. Yeah. Also, whenever like I ask someone if they do, like I've had like one of my friends, he's like, "Oh my god, I loved how you and this, and I love the story of this episode you really like." I'm like, "Great, let's go more into depth of it. What do you mean this and this and that?" But then they never respond. Oh, okay. Well, okay. Well, thanks. Thanks for that. That was great.
I love it. Okay, the other question we were talking about was titling your podcast episodes and your podcast, I guess. What kind
Yeah.
of questions you have around that?
Yeah. So like, I just jump into it. I don't have. Well, like for me, when I do my podcast, sometimes if it's someone really new, I would try to FaceTime them and talk a little bit their background and like what you want to talk about,
Good.
this and that. Sometimes if I really know the person, we'll just jump right into it, and I'm having a good time. And then like if they say something like a funny line or whatever, I think that would be a great title for the podcast because they said it, and then that's like a good title for it.
Okay.
What do you think
Yeah.
of that? Like, I
Yeah.
can't find good titles.
So the big thing to think about is if I was a new listener trying to find your show, I don't know who you are. I don't know. I've never listened to your show, but I'm trying to find your show. If
Mm-hmm.
I went to Google
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, and I typed in something to find your show, what would I type into Google that would bring me to you or to your
Mm-hmm.
episode? And that's those are your keywords, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I have a podcast about how to podcast, that's the name of my show.
Right.
So that's
Cool show, by the way.
pretty specific name, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to Google and you type in how to podcast
Mm-hmm.
series, I pop up
Mm-hmm.
like, ta-da.
Right.
So that's something somebody would search. How to
Mm-hmm.
podcast. It's
Mm-hmm.
right there. That's right. Okay. So for your show, what are those keywords that somebody would type in? Like, I don't think you want them searching the word coffee.
Right.
Right. That's not the keyword of your show.
No.
So you need
No.
something in there that's like helps people find you, make it really
Mm-hmm.
easy to find you. And it
Mm-hmm.
could be the name of your show. And then, you know how like in a book, they have a title and then they have a subtitle.
Mm-hmm.
They have a book and then colon, and then they make the title longer.
Mm-hmm.
You can
Mm-hmm.
add a little bit more to your title that kind of gives some key search words that people
Mm-hmm.
would type in or, to find your show.
Mm-hmm.
So, great conversations around relationships or great stories that people tell, things like
Mm-hmm.
that. Okay. So I might go to Google and type in, I want a podcast about stories or personal journeys or
Right.
overcoming obstacles. There's something there you got to put into your title that somebody would actually search. Great example. If I did the Dave Campbell podcast, would you go search for that if you never knew me, who I was? No.
No.
No. You right? So that's a terrible name. So I will never have the Dave Campbell podcast because that makes no sense. And there's a bajillion Dave Campbells in the world. So
Yeah.
why would I do that? Right.
Right. Exactly.
So
right.
do something that somebody would search. That's really important.
Mm-hmm.
And do that for your episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in real estate, Tyler, when real estate is all about buying something, and they always say real estate's all about location, location, location. The top three things important about real estate: location, location, location.
Mm-hmm.
You have to buy a property that's in a good place that's going to make money
Mm-hmm.
for you.
Mm-hmm.
Your title is location, location, location. You only have
Mm-hmm.
so many words that can be shown on your phone. So you
Right.
want to make
right.
good use of those words.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. And try to put the best words at the beginning, because
Okay.
in some apps, they kind of cut it off after a certain point.
Right.
So what are those best words that describe that episode, and put them at the very beginning of your title? So don't waste any space. Don't say the name of your podcast in the title,
Right.
because you already have the name of your podcast on your podcast.
Yeah.
You don't have to
right.
tell me 2 times.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
take all that space away and put something in there. Some people like to put the name of the guest first.
Mm-hmm.
If nobody knows who the guest is,
Mm-hmm.
like if I was on your show, no one would know who I am, right? They're like, who's this guy?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right.
But maybe the topic of what we talk about, and then my name. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if I came on your show and you're like, you could have Dave Campbell, how to start a podcast, or you could have how to start a podcast with Dave Campbell.
Yeah.
See the difference?
That's cool. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my God, I like that.
You're putting
That's
the
really
best stuff at the beginning,
Right.
so that it shows up on their phone and it's searchable.
Right.
If you put episode 5, Dave Campbell,
It's just like, why
Who's
would
going to
someone?
search for that, Tyler? Who's going to go
Right.
on Google and type episode 5, Dave Campbell? Nobody's going to do
Right.
that.
Right.
But
Right.
somebody will type how to podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody will type that, and you'll get
Mm-hmm.
found just by that. So I'll give you a
Right.
good example. If you go to Google
Thank you.
sometime and
Mm-hmm.
type in Living the Next Chapter podcast on
Mm-hmm.
Google, you will find that's one of my shows, one of my 7
Mm-hmm.
shows. Not only am I found on page 1 of Google, but I am the first 7 to 10 entries on Google. I almost take the whole first page of Google
Oh
for my
wow,
podcast.
that's impressive.
That's how people find you.
That's cool. Do you
Okay.
also promote your shows too?
Not much. I have
How do you
social
do
media.
that?
I have social media. I have a website.
Oh, you have a
I
website.
yeah,
That's cool.
I have YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
All those things feed into Google. And
Mm-hmm.
think of it this way, Google wants a person who comes to Google to have a good experience.
Mm-hmm.
So they want to give the best
Right.
results. They don't want to waste
Right.
your time as a user
Right.
of Google. So you
Right.
need to give them good information. Some people
Mm-hmm.
call it Google juice. You need to give them the best Google juice possible to give
Yeah.
to their users.
Right.
Okay. So a website is great, very easy to do, to set up, but it's searchable.
Right.
The content within Instagram is not quite as searchable
Mm-hmm.
as a
Right.
website would be,
Mm-hmm.
because you have to
Yeah.
be in Instagram to see that content.
Right.
A website, you don't have to be in anything. You're on the internet.
How do you make a website, by the way? Sorry, side note.
That's
How do
good.
you...
So first you need to come up with a domain name, www.tyler.com or something. You have to come up with some kind of name for the domain.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And then you have to find and see if anybody else took that name.
Mm-hmm.
There's only so many names, right?
Right.
So
Right.
pick a name that works for your show or
Mm-hmm.
is searchable.
Mm-hmm.
Again, my domain is how to podcast.
Right.
Right. It's right in
Right.
the domain. So I own the
Right.
domain, I own the
Right.
podcast name.
Right. Right.
So it's right in the name. You can't escape the
Right.
name. I'm all around you like a bee buzzing around you. It's like, I got it. Right. That's what I am. So
Right.
think of it that way. What domain would you purchase?
Right.
And then you can buy them for, sometimes they go on sale, but you can buy a domain for like a yearly fee, $10, $20. One of my domains is called Dad Space because I have a podcast called Dad Space.
Right.
The dadspace.com, when I went to buy it, was $14,000.
Oh my God. Wow.
But Dad Space, that was dadspace.com. Dadspace.ca. I'm in Canada, so we have CA as an extension. It was $1.99.
Oh, really?
So I bought it, $1.99. I own dadspace.ca. I'm the only one in the world, the entire world, that has that website.
Dang. That's cool. That's really neat. That's very inspiring.
Yeah. So think about it, put some thought into it, and just do a search. Go to Google and type in the name of the domain that you want and put .com at the end and see if it's already out there. If it's not, you can buy it.
Okay, cool.
I can help show you how to do that if you ever want to in the future. But,
okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I might definitely reach out and then be like, hey, I need your help.
Yeah. And then I built my entire website on Canva.
Really?
Yeah. So, and you can have a Canva account for free, and you can build a website basically for free after you buy the address.
Right.
There you go.
Right. How much is the address usually?
Like I said, about sometimes $10. I paid $1.99 for one, and you pay them for it like it's a yearly update. So every year you renew it.
Gotcha.
So if you I have 25 domains right now that I purchased. Again, I have a problem, but I have every time I get an idea, I just go buy the domain so nobody can take my idea. Right. So, but then what you can do is you can buy the domain and then redirect it to your Instagram. So anybody that types in the name of your website shows up on Instagram.
Right.
You can do that in the meantime, but you own the name.
Right.
Put some thought into that and what you look for.
Okay. Good to know. Yeah, I've always wanted to have my own website, but I just didn't know how to start, like the podcast. And so
there you go.
Yeah, I know you have to put a lot of time and energy into it, and I've been so busy. So I'm like, all right, well, if I have time in the summer, then I'll jump into it. But yeah,
cool.
it's in the back burner, but definitely thought of it.
So the titling, make sure in your episodes you put the information that's interesting at the front and then maybe put your guest name later on, unless they're, I don't know, Joe Rogan comes on your show. It's like Joe Rogan, you want to say Joe Rogan. Like, of course.
Right. Yeah.
Because people are looking for that.
Yeah.
But again, if I came on your show, nobody's looking for my name, to be quite honest, Tyler, and I know that. So you'd want to put the topic more than the person at the beginning.
That's smart.
Keep that in mind. Try that with your episodes that are already out. Go back to your episode. You can rename your titles and it won't change anything. And just see if you get more listens.
Okay.
Just play with them. With some of those keywords from the episode. Don't put like keywords that have nothing to do with your episode. That's not going to help. Right? Because if I search and find your show and you say, make $1 million in an hour, and then your podcast is about cooking recipes. It's like, I came for cooking recipes. I'm not here for that. Right. So, so make sure that the words actually make sense to the episode, but just start playing with those episode titles.
Right.
Just go into wherever you have them and just change the names and see if they get more listens. You can play with them.
Cool. Okay, cool. Good to know. I have a quick question.
Sure.
So I know that you love to do podcasting. Do you prefer to host more, or do you like being on a guest?
Wow, that's a good question. I'm doing more guesting. It feels weird to be the guest, to be quite honest. Too. I feel like I'm in the passenger seat of the car instead of driving the car. And I don't know where we're going, and it feels a little weird. Like I get my seatbelt on for sure. But it just feels a little strange. I love it though. Again, going back to growing my audience by being on more shows. More people get to hear my voice. Right. Maybe they'll come over and listen to my show. That would be awesome. But even if they don't, I still want to come on and give value to your listeners. Right. And how can I help your listeners? That would be great. I'd love to be able to help you. That's my focus if I'm a guest. How can I help the host? Right. Instead of coming to sell something, I'm coming to help you. That's it. That's all I want to do is help you. Right. And in a conversation, if something happens, awesome. But if nothing happens, great. I came to help you. That's my main focus.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. I would love to have you on my podcast sometime if you're ever up for it.
I love it. I drink coffee. So yeah, we could do that. Yeah. We also talked about celebrities for your podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's your question around celebrities on your podcast?
Yeah, so I've had one or two of them on there, and I really loved their their background and their inspirations and the normal stuff. I've been trying to reach out to more celebrities, not the super popular ones, but some ones that been around enough.
Yeah. Somebody like me, for example.
Yeah.
I'm not a celebrity.
Well, I mean, you had a few guests on that's been on the red carpet. I mean, that's really cool. And so
okay. So the one thing I would say is don't be creepy about this, but when you have somebody on that's got connections, don't just have them on to get connections from them. Have them on because you want to have them on. Okay. So you might meet somebody who's a movie who directs movies. Let's talk to them about how it is to write a movie. I had a woman on who has a movie on Netflix.
Oh, really?
So I asked her, how do you get your movie to Netflix? And we had a great conversation. And then from there, at the end, when we're all done, we're finished recording, I hit stop. She's still on the screen with me, and I'm like, listen, that was awesome. If there's anybody that you think would be a great guest for me on my show, I'm always looking for guests, and that would be really helpful. And if you send me somebody, I'll put them at the top of the list and I'll give them a great experience because you're sending them to me. So thank you. And they're like, you know what? I do. I have this person and I'll send them your thing. And they get on their phone while they're talking to you. Oh, I know this person. They'll come on. You've just got another layer into somebody's life. And then you have that other person come on. You ask the same question. Hey, do you know anybody who would be great for my show? Yeah. And then you get to meet more people through them. So ask. Don't be afraid to ask. at the end of your recording. Don't do
Right.
it during the recording,
Right. Of course.
but
Of
do it
course.
after the fact when they're all done, because they're not being recorded in that moment, right?
Yeah.
And just say, hey, I really loved having you on the show. Thank you for making time in your calendar. I know you're busy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always looking for actors or musicians, or
Mm-hmm.
so you have a musician on your show. Who else do
Mm-hmm.
you play with? Who else would you know that I could have on my show to talk music?
Mm-hmm.
And then be quiet and just let them think for a second.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll start giving you contacts. And then you can
Mm-hmm.
even say, oh, that's great. Do you mind if I mentioned to them that I asked you if it was okay to come on the podcast? Oh yeah, use my name, no problem. And then your
Mm-hmm.
email is, hello, Mr. or Mrs. I just had so and so on my show. They thought you'd
Mm-hmm.
be a great guest. Would you like to
Mm-hmm.
come on my podcast?
Right. Right. Yeah. So
So
like
that
for example,
works.
right. Right. I mean, for example, uh, I like I said before we started the show, I've been reaching out to different podcasters and this and that. This one woman that's like a celebrity chef, I guess. Uh, she has her own podcast on the Food Network, and so I reached out and I was like, hey, I would love to be on your show. I've when I was 13 years old, I like pretended that I actually made my own food blog, and I pretended that I recorded my stuff, and I pretended that I was on the Food Network, this and this and that. I'd love to be a great guest on your show, this and this and this and that. And she reached out to me, and she's like, "Hey, thank you so much, thank you, this is awesome." But I just want to let you know that usually we have people that are like part of the Food Network that's in it already. But I'll definitely send it to the podcasters and to the managers and
Nice.
this and that. And so then I was like, oh, cool, thank you. And I totally understand, no problem. Um, by the way, side note, if you ever want to be on my podcast, it's super fun, chill, and relaxing. I love to talk about, inspirations of cooking and this and that. But she never responded.
There you go. Well, keep going. Don't stop doing that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, find a podcast that you love
Mm-hmm.
and tell them why you love it and invite them on your show.
Mm-hmm.
Just say, hey, I'd love to have you on my show. Or like I did for you, give me a commercial for your show and I'd love to promote you on my podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Who does that? Right? You're
Right.
like, okay,
Right.
yeah, I'll send you. Yeah, sure. Right. Who's going to say no to that? No, please don't
Right.
promote me. I don't want new people. No. Who's going to say that?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do
Yeah.
that. Reach out to them and offer them something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a great way to build that relationship.
Right. Right. Cool. That's
Cool.
awesome. That's pretty cool.
So yeah,
That's
celebrities
really cool.
are out there. You just got to find a way to get to them.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of mine was her name is Laura. She was on a movie with Leonardo DiCaprio called Django. Jamie
cool.
Foxx. She's worked with Woody Harrelson.
Oh, nice.
She's been on Friends, TV show Friends.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow, she's been on everything, huh?
Yeah. So she came on my podcast and we had an hour and a half together. It was great. Super amazing. So
what podcast was that?
That was Living the Next Chapter. She's an author now, as well as being an actor. So she came on to talk about her new book.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm writing that down so I can, check your podcast out.
Yeah. If you want to find somebody who wants to come on podcast, go to Amazon, look at all the new book releases, and then just start picking books that interest you and send them a message. Hey, I saw you have a new book, just came out last week. I'd love to have you on my show. I want to promote your book. Guess who wants to sell books, Tyler?
Right.
The people with new books.
Right.
So if there's a book out there, you're like, oh, this is a musician and they wrote a book, and you want to talk to them, and they're famous, just reach out and say, I have a podcast. I'd love to promote your book on my show. Would you like to come on and talk about your new book? Easy. Cool. Or they have a new song or a new movie or a new whatever, a new TV show. Everybody with something new wants to promote it. They need to promote it.
Yeah, right. Do you just send it on an email or do you just
do a Google search, find them, find out how you can find them. They're usually going to have people who work for them that like the Food Network who do all that work behind the scenes. But all you need to do is reach out like you did for the Food Network. Just keep doing it. Just don't stop. You'll surprise yourself who you get access to.
Right.
And then the other thing I would say is put some time and effort into the quality of your show. Make it as best as you can so that your guest has a great experience. and
Right.
and then leaves your podcast and goes, "Oh, you got to go on this kid Tyler's podcast. He's awesome." And they start talking about you and you're not even in the room.
Right.
And then all of a sudden the emails start coming in and you're off. I had an email today from a new author. I've never met them. They're like, "I want to be on your show."
No, that's awesome.
I have no idea who they are, Tyler. I haven't even read the email yet. I've kind of skimmed it before we jumped on. I now have a new author that has tracked me down. I haven't gone after them. They're coming after me now.
Oh, that's awesome. Congratulations.
So, but that'll happen for you as well.
Right? That's awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for everything you do. My gosh, that's amazing.
See, I love it.
Thank you. That's really awesome of you.
All right, Tyler, before we go, I know I've had you for a long time. Any other questions? Anything else that we can chat about? Would it help you?
Oh, yeah. I got a question. I know that. Sorry, I just love the topic of podcasting and like the connection of it all. I just find it so cool and entertaining, and just the stories that you have. It's just so cool. I really like it. Sorry. I guess my question is, I know that different podcasters either have a video podcast or they don't. For me personally, I use Anchor and the Spotify, so I just send them a link and then you just talk on the phone. What do you think of like that?
That's good. Yeah, that works. I like using Zoom like we're doing right now because you can have a free Zoom account. It doesn't cost anything as long as you stay under 45 minutes for each recording. Okay, if you go over 45, they just shut you off, which is awkward. So make sure you keep that in mind. But then I went to the paid version of Zoom as well. So now I can just stay on Zoom 24 hours a day if I want. I wouldn't. But so I like that because it's easy for them to use. There's another one called Riverside, which records as well. And it's a better quality than Zoom but some people have trouble navigating it. So I bounce between those two. But that's kind of how I do my stuff as far as the recording side of it. What else would you need to know?
Because I really like I like the idea of having that face to face.
Yeah.
But then I also really like talking on the phone because I don't know. I just think that it's like it's either you sometimes driving with stick or automatic. The difference.
I drive stick. So there you go. There you go. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Obviously. Yeah.
So you're going to get better quality if you record on a platform than if you record on a phone. That's just microphones are better than a cell phone. You sound great, by the way, right now. So just
thank you. Okay, you sound great too.
But a microphone does make it a little bit better, a little easier. And then when you record like this, you get the files come to you and you can play with them. You can edit, you can do all kinds of stuff. I put music and stuff like you do into my podcasts and all that. So that's another thing you can do with an editing software and then having the files from Zoom, for example. So I like that. I like that Anchor, called Spotify for podcasters, does give you does give you tools to record. That is smart. Really good. There's a little bit of limit to some of the things they can do and what they can't do.
Right.
But again, at least they're giving us some tools. I love that.
Right.
As long as your guests have a good experience, that's the main thing.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely the main thing.
Make it easy for your guest.
Right. Exactly. I really like your setup, by the way. It's very nice. I didn't even notice the headphones that you're wearing.
There you go.
Great.
It does help with your voice coming through my speakers. It doesn't go back into the microphone and create that problem, right? So it helps.
Right.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So Tyler, talk about your podcast one more time before we go again. Where's everybody going? How do we find you? Where's the best place to find you? And all that great stuff.
Awesome. So you can find me on Spotify, called Table for Two. Well, as in like number two, like not the TWO, like as in like number two.
Okay.
I forgot to mention that. And look for the coffee smile. Like it's an actual coffee. It actually like foamed its bubbles and it has a smile and it's a smiley face, which was kind of funny. So look for that. And then my name is Tyler Barker. I also do stand up and improv too. And I hope that people that are listening ever want to come to my show too, they are more than welcome to as well. And then you can also come on my show too. I'd love to
I
talk
would
to
love
you.
it. I would love it, Tyler. And one other thing too to keep in mind, try to get your podcast on as many different apps as possible so that people can find you everywhere.
Right.
Okay. So imagine this, 5 people in a room and somebody comes in and says, oh, hey, everybody, you got to listen to Tyler's new show. It's awesome. So I pull up Apple on my phone. The guy beside me pulls up Google. Person over there pulls up Audible. We all have different apps, and you might be there and you might not be there.
Right.
Make sure you're everywhere. Okay.
How do you?
I can help you with that to show you how to do that, but you want to be everywhere. I'll give you an example. My podcasts can be found in Africa.
Oh, wow. That's
There's
cool.
an app in Africa. They have their own app. There's also 2 in India that my podcast is found on. So I have listeners listening to us right now who are in India.
That's awesome.
Okay, but you have to submit your podcast. You have to give it to them, the address to your podcast, so that they can then play it. So you have to set it up one time. You set it up once, and then you never have to worry about it. But be everywhere on every app you can. So just like you were saying about social media being everywhere, be on every app, not just Spotify, not just Apple. Be everywhere, and then anybody can find you. That's going to help you grow your show.
Well, that's cool. Okay. That's awesome. Yeah. Because I also have family down in Japan too, and they're like, "Hey, yeah, send us your thing." I'm like, "Okay, great." And so I sent them it to it, and it's kind of funny how you said Africa and all that, because I was like, "Oh wow, yeah, that's
there you
awesome."
Go. Okay, and that'll help you grow your show.
Cool.
Good
Thank you so much for all your advice. I really appreciate it.
It's great. And if you ever need help, you want to maybe buy that domain and you want to jump on the computer, we can share a screen and I can walk you through all that. Or you want to add your podcast to different players. Again, we can jump on and share our screen together. I can walk you through and show you how to do that.
Right. Yeah, I would be totally down for that, because I think that you're definitely a podcast legend and you know what you're doing.
Oh, Tyler, there's another $5. That cost me $10 so far. That's awesome. Awesome. So everyone, go check out Tyler's podcast. Go give him some love. Come on, people. 5 listeners. Come on, people. We can help here. So if you're listening to my voice, you're listening to the How to Podcast series. Thank you. And please head over to Tyler's podcast. He's got a nice hot cup of coffee waiting for you. Some great conversation. And Tyler's amazing. So go there and support Tyler's podcast, everyone. And make sure he knows that you came from our podcast. Tyler, thank you for being part of the How to Podcast series. You're a great co-host. Come back in the future. Okay, come back.
I'd love to.
Let's keep talking, okay?
That'd be awesome.
All right. Great job, Tyler.